what we're going to do is we're going to start by just dividing the paper up, and this is just parchment paper that you can get from Michael's. It's about $3 a sheet. Definitely handy if you want to do this kind of stuff. And this is just an old chessboard that I'm writing on with a soft back, so I'm not tearing up paper too hard. From a previous example, you can see that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines. Not quite divided equally. So if I measure the paper here out, it comes out to about 11 inches. That gives me at least a good ½ inch, ¼ inch on the top as a guide. ¼ inch on the bottom as a guide. And of course the corners I'll be cutting off, so I'm not going to worry too much about those. So these are my borders. And I'm writing really lightly on here. I don't want to go too heavy. So now I've got 11 and just under ½ of an inch, 11 and a half, give or take. So I got to divide this into 10. So if I go a little bit over 1 inch and an eighth for each one, so that'll probably be plenty. As you can see here, it's definitely got a pretty good space in there. So I'm just gonna, again, guide off my top and bottom rows here. So the sigil for Bear Hill Shire is right here, and this is basically put on the carbon paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find my center of the paper here, which again is square at a foot. So if I go 6 inches, there's my center, and I come down at least the top letters about there. So if I put it right about there, which means I'd have the paper right at the top of the side there. And this is where I want to use a pen to transfer from the carbon paper on here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to trace around. Now if I kind of lift it up here but keep it in place, you can see there's my crossed swords. And we need a couple more details there. So I'm just going to get a lot of good responses on the plaques from the last time that they were displayed. I definitely want to keep doing this so that other people can hang these proudly on their walls and say, yeah, I'm a knight of that shire. Okay, that looks good for that. Okay, so next is to sketch out the writing, and our name of the shire in Latin is Cruthaich. So I'm going to start up here, and again the corners are going to go away, so I might as well just etch out the corners now. And it's 1 inch up and 1 inch over. Never once for a job have I had the right cursive, but I actually do find that I miss it and I enjoy it, and having a calligraphy set is definitely a plus for that. Then you get to do all kinds of cool shapes with it. Shapes and letter designs and fonts, and you learn all the different things that people have just forgotten over the years, which is, you know, how the English language in a typeset world actually works. So that's kind of cool. So I'm going to go with a basic font here, and this is an Old English font, and just trying to eyeball it and free space it here as best I can off of the example that I have from the previous one, which was totally eyeballed. And these are just square letters, angled 45s, that's it. That's actually the hardest part. So from here, we're going to start doing the rest of our calligraphy. This is just going to be just handwritten script, basically cursive. One important thing to remember is spelling counts, because you can't fix it. There's a reason I'm doing this in pencil first, is because I also want to make sure that I got the spacing on the document correct. So if my lines are too wide, I gotta redo it. But at least it's a lot easier to erase pencil than it is to get rid of calligraphy ink. And I still gotta have room for a seal down here. So that's kind of important. I don't want to miss that. And the seal is going to be, I've got it here somewhere. Right here. So that's the seal. And this is going to be a wax seal, and it's going to go right here. So I can make sure I don't overwrite this space. And then so now we've got our path here, so to speak. Now we're going to get rid of all the excess lines. I'm also going to cut off the parts we don't need here with the scissors, which is basically just me erasing the lines, and then we start doing the calligraphy. So before I even get going on that, I just want to cut my corners here that I drew. Now we've got our official thing here. So we do have our colors here. This is black. Now here's the thing about calligraphy sets. When you use them, you want to make sure that you keep them clean, okay? And the best way to keep your stuff clean is to follow many videos online about this. They're very easy to get. Let's try this again. Okay. So we've got our flame. Got a cup of water. Okay. And we've got our inks. So you want to make sure that you shake your ink up really good. Otherwise it's going to start to come out all blotchy. And you do want to generally keep the ink off the work that you're working on, because this is going to be one of those things where you do a dip and write. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the pen wet. Okay. And I've got a paper towel here. And I'm just going to wipe this on. And then I'm going to take the candle, and I'm just going to hold the tip of the pen over the candle to burn off any old excess ink. Now this kind of pen has a well or a reservoir where the ink goes. So if you dip it in far enough, if you can see this here, it's got this very small opening right here that you can see is where the ink goes. So the theory is I dip it in the ink well, and then I get ink in the well, in the reservoir. So I'm going to put this in here, and I don't have enough ink to go all the way down, so I'm just going to grab the tip, give it a couple grabs, and I'm going to start writing. Now I have to keep the pen at a certain angle for this to work, so I'm just going to stay here, come down, and cut over. And you'll tell pretty fast when the ink's running out. This kind of calligraphy is almost best done on a hard surface because of the way that the paper grabs the ink and pushes it down. You don't want too much ink on there, otherwise you're not going to see the lines the way they should be. And again, hopefully you see why I penciled this out first, because doing this freehand, there's really no room for mistakes. Now you want to be really careful not to touch the ink. It will smear until it's dry. And sometimes the drying can take about an hour. Depends on what kind of ink you use, depends on what kind of paper you use. And you know that there's powders that you can put on the ink to help dry it quicker. I'm not really in that big of a hurry, so you can just air dry. So there's our title, and as you can see, it's looking pretty good. So right away I want to clean this off. So I'm going to take my next tip, which is a very fine tip. Always close your ink when you're done with it, because knocking your ink over your work basically just means, hey, guess what, you get to start over. Always a good time.